end today, but for many it does not. For the 1.5 million active duty military, their everyday job is, well, at its core, freedom. In places far and wide, big and small. So we thought we'd remember an important part of the country's military family, those who take care of veterans every day. Often family members, young and driven, they too are part of why we can celebrate Independence Day. That's 5.5 million military caregivers today and growing, helping with medicines, comforting partners with bad mornings or nights, holding hands during tough physical therapy sessions, dressing wounds more severe than our history has ever seen. And another thing, they do this more than double the years versus the average. Joining me now, Colleen Rose, who cares for her husband John, an active duty Marine who sustained significant head injuries after an IED attack. Colleen is also an Elizabeth Dole Foundation Hidden Heroes Fellow. Also with us, retired Marine Staff Sergeant Eric Alva, the first American injured in the Iraq War who lost his right leg. Staff Sergeant Alva is also the Iraq War's first Purple Heart recipient. Colleen, I want to start with you, and thanks for being with us. 5.5 million, not a lot of people know about that. 5.5 million caring for veterans. Independence Day means a whole lot of different things for good people like you who fight every day to care for your loved ones.
Yes, Richard, that's totally correct. Thank you so much for having me.
You betcha. So tell me about that. What is it like to care for John?
You know, it's really a journey. When I first started caring for my husband, he was very severely injured. I was doing things like caring for his burns, helping him get dressed. And 9 years after his injury, it looks a lot different than it used to. Today, I help him with more day-to-day things. He's really independent, so I'm just helping managing the household. So it's definitely changed a lot.
You know, Staff Sergeant, and again, thank you, sir, for your service. Remember those people who cared for you when you first came back. And I know that there are probably vivid images in your mind of those who cared for you.
Yes, Richard, thank you. And thank you for having me. Thank you for your kind words. I had a very strong support system, especially my mother was my main caregiver.
And tell me about what she did that stood out.
Well, other than making sure that I ate or, I was there to be comforted because there was a lot of crying, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of loss. Psychologically, she played a big role in my mental state as well.
Colleen, what kind of support do caregivers like you need? Because, again, as I was mentioning, severe injuries in some cases. Staff Sergeant Alva, again, having to lose a limb, in your case, an IED attack, and then his head injuries that to deal with. What sort of support do you need?
The support that we need is really extensive. It totally takes a village, Richard. I think people in the community, if they're interested in helping, I would say thank you, first of all, for acknowledging us and wanting to help people like me. But I think you can learn about what our life is like. You can go to hiddenheroes.org and read stories about me and people like me. And I think if you're looking in the larger sense to help us is to look for those organizations that are in your communities every single day helping caregivers.
Yeah,
the infrastructure is there already.
And you face economic challenge, do you not?
Totally. I have a lot of student loan debt, which I accrued before my husband was injured, and it's difficult to maintain employment throughout years of care, through injuries and through procedures that he requires. So it's really hard to make on-time payments for very costly student loans during that time.
So caregiving families really working through it. Staff Sergeant, you are also openly gay. Of the more than 200,000 LGBTQ service members, according to a +1 study, the VA says depression and suicidal thoughts, they're at a rate twice that of heterosexual veterans. How did your caregivers help you through these experiences?
That's interesting, Richard, because, of course I wasn't out at that time and everything, but again, I think, to echo what Colleen said, when you have a village and people who support you, those, diversities of my background, people didn't really put first. It was about my recovery, my care, and looking, making sure that I came back, and which I did. And, I have a husband today who's my dependent, former Army, and he plays a big role because as of July 4th, just the other day, he made sure I had my earplugs next to the nightstand because those fireworks still echo some of the bombs that were being dropped that night, and so, you know, he's my primary caregiver now, and you know, I've been in good hands all this time.
In good hands. Your husband here, Staff Sergeant, for you, Colleen, you are those good hands. But what's amazing about what you've done, Colleen, for your husband, you also had your own battle. You are a cancer survivor, so you are battling two fronts. How did you do that?
You know, I think you just do it because you don't really have a choice. So you just go ahead and you check off the things on your to-do list, and you tap into that village and your friends and your family, and you deal with all of the emotions a lot later, unfortunately.
What would your words of advice be for those who are caregivers? Often it's not easy to express the difficult times, but as you know, it helps other caregivers when they hear, this is the tough times we made it through, Colleen.
Sure, I think that for any caregiver out there, you're doing more than you realize. I would say good job, number one. And I would say ask for help. It's really difficult to ask for help when you're the one used to doing all of the helping. But if you're supported, your service member, your veteran is going to be better taken care of, and that's really what it's all about.
Staff Sergeant, as you have lived through your life and you look at the caregivers that are important to you, you're talking about your husband, in the LGBTQ space, how is caregiving maybe a little bit different?
It's a little bit different sometimes because sometimes people have not actually disclosed their identities. So asking for help puts it as a reservation as their caregiver can be, because they don't want people to actually know because of the ramifications of the discrimination that, you know, LGBT veterans still face. And so it may be a little difficult, but what we do is tell personal stories, and we make sure that there's a network out there, you know, that we can help LGBT veterans to realize that they're not alone, and to, you know, to look at that, you know, whether gay, straight, you know, we are all veterans of this great country, and we all, thanks to Colleen and like my mother, who were the caregivers, that we should all be there to support each other and just network. And if they need assistance too, then as a veteran who recovered, I can be there too as a caregiver.
Well, to all of certainly the veterans and to all the caregivers of veterans, I thank you both. Staff Sergeant Alva, I appreciate you holding up high the caregivers that have helped you throughout the time. Colleen Rose, hats off to you as well for you caring for your husband and what you do to bring awareness to this very topic. I appreciate you both spending the time as we finish out this Independence Day weekend. Thank you for your
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you so much. Of note here, if you want more information, you can go to Hidden Heroes